Fever 1793, Chapter 18, September 25th, 1793. I think the malady is becoming more alarming. More than one half of Philadelphia has emigrated. Letter of John Walsh, Clerk, Philadelphia, 1793. Silas woke me the next day by purring next to my head. I rose and stretched, enjoying the coolness brought by the night. Grandfather snored across the room. We had survived one day and one night. I crept downstairs. I wanted grandfather to get as much rest as he could. My skin was crusty with filth, and I itched. No doubt, I looked a fright and smelled worse. I made my first decision of the day. I needed a bath. Much as I hate to start a fire on a day like this, we have to boil water. I told Silas. I fumbled with a flint and tinder until a spark jumped and I built a respectable blaze. It was a shame that there was no one to boast to but Silas. I didn't bother putting a skirt or buddies over my shift to haul water from the well. It felt too good to walk across the garden unburdened by heavy skirts. Nobody can see me, I told Silas, who watched with disapproval. There isn't another soul for blocks. I dumped bucket after bucket of water into Eliza's biggest pots and swung them over the fire. As the water heated, I scavenged in the garden again. Gardening at dawn in a thin shift and with loose hair was nearly fun. I felt like a sprite or a hungry leprechaun turning over leaves in search of a treat, looking under weeds for a pot of gold or perhaps a turnip. Gardening in night clothes could become a new fashion. I thought, imagine plump Mrs. Ogilvy planting radishes in a red-striped nightcap. That would be a sight to turn Philadelphia on its ear. The bubbling pots of water made the air in the kitchen thick and hard to breathe. I dragged the bathing tub into the front room and filled it with boiling water. When the tub was half full, I added cold water straight from the well until the temperature was comfortable. I closed the shutters, bolted the front door, and closed the door to the kitchen. Assured of privacy, I removed my shift and settled into the warm water. It feels strange to take a bath like this. The house so quiet, no sound from the street. Alone except for a nosy orange cat. I usually bathe once a month or for special occasions. I stuck my leg up in the air and rubbed it with soap. This felt like a special occasion. The water soon turned brown with weeks of dirt and sweat. I held my breath and dunked my head under the water. I scrubbed my hair with soap and dunked again, over and over, until my hair was free of blood and filth. I rubbed the soap on a rag and scrubbed my skin until it burned. When even the soles of my feet were clean, I dried myself by the kitchen fire. My skin crawled at the thought of putting on my dirty clothes again. The only other clothes that fit me were someplace in the Pennsylvania countryside with the farmer who had abandoned us. I slipped on my shift and went up to my bedchamber. I eyed Mother's trunk. I was nearly as tall as she, even if I didn't fill out bodies the way a grown woman did. I swallowed. I promise I won't wear any of her clothes to go fishing or climb trees, I said aloud as I opened the latch. Mother's shift and blue and white striped overskirt fit better than I had imagined. They were made of cotton spun fine and tightly woven and felt as light as silk after wearing my dirt-encrusted homespun for so long. I twirled around the room, ready for a ball, curtsying to the east corner, then the west. This would suit me fine. It was time to wake grandfather. Too much sleep could be as bad as not enough, and I needed his help in the garden. He was sleeping on his back, his arm thrown to either side. His chest rattled with every breath, and his face was the color of spoiled cream. Perhaps we should have found a way to stay at Bush Hill. He still wasn't over his cough. Mrs. Flagg would have welcomed the chance to dote on him for a few days, but she had other responsibilities. I could take care of grandfather. I shook his shoulder gently. Grandfather, time to wake. I found a few things to eat and we have much to do today. He opened one eye. I will have a dozen eggs, a loaf of bread, and basket of plums, please, he mumbled. Your stomach will feel better if you don't talk about food, I replied, but we'll find something today. I floated down the stairs, clean, fresh, and hungry. Silas trailed behind me, swatting at the edge of my skirt. I don't suppose you could be useful and catch me a bite to eat, I said. No mice, mind you. A fat chicken would be lovely, or a length of sausage or beef stew. Listen to me, I am as bad as grandfather. I set a small pot of water to boil and added the beans and turnip. The thieves hadn't bothered to take any of the herbs drying overhead. I sprinkled parsley and sweet thyme into the water. While the soup cooked, I swept the kitchen floor, cleaned the broken crockery. It made so much noise I didn't not hear grandfather entered the room. It sounds like you are tearing the house apart board by board, he said. He squinted. Excuse me, miss, have you seen my granddaughter, Mattie? She must be around here somewhere. Filthy little urchin she is, wearing a grimy dress and a ragged cap. Get on with you, I said. There's no call to be rude, and the bathe water is still warm if you don't mind it gritty. I'm a soldier girl. I have bathed in icy streams. I interrupted. Frozen lakes and rushing rivers. I know a real soldier doesn't need hot water, but I don't want you smelling like a real soldier. Thank you very much, especially in this heat. Once you have finished bathing, put your dirty clothes in the water. I will wash them later. Grandfather bathed quickly and was polite about his breakfast soup. It was slightly better than warm water with weeds in it, but not by much. Don't suppose there's any way we could convince Eliza to come back right away, is there? Grandfather asked as he forced himself to swallow another spoonful. That wouldn't be right, I said. I'm sure she's helping the people who are truly needy, folk sick with fever who can't care for themselves. We shouldn't be greedy. Is there much food in the garden? He asked. A little, I answered. We need to find someone who will sell us some bread and meat. He shook his head slowly. I don't like the idea of leaving the house, he said. The world out there has turned upside down. He unbuttoned his top button and coughed. What if we were gone and Lucille came by with a wagon searching for us? No, we're safe here, and I don't want to hear any more talk of venturing outside unless it's to the garden. We will stick to home until we don't have a choice. I spent the afternoon watching and watering and watering. Grandfather tried to help, but his left arm wouldn't listen to him. As soon as he stepped into the sunshine, his face turned the terrible shade of red again and he could barely breathe. I begged him to stay on the porch. He blustered and complained at first, but decided it was high time he cleaned and oiled his old rifle. Maybe he could hunt squirrel when the weather cooled. The pole beans looked better and the squash leaves spread like wide green hands shortly after I watered them. I had never thought a person could be so proud of a squash plant, but I was ready to hug all of mine. I hauled buckets of water to the potato patch, drenching the plants, which looked healthiest. When the plot was water-soaked, I gently poked the mud with my fingers until I found 6 fist-sized potatoes. I danced a few steps as I carried my prizes up onto the back porch where grandfather sat in the shade. Potatoes, I cried, potatoes, potatoes, potatoes. What on earth has gotten into you, girl? He asked. I spun around his chair. This is my potato dance, grandfather. Look what I found. We will have a real supper tonight. Have you ever seen anything as beautiful as a potato? Supper was a royal feast of boiled potatoes seasoned with scrawny turnip and few beans. But there was enough to ease the ache in our stomachs. Grandfather found a small bag of roasted coffee beans the thieves had overlooked and he cooked a pot for us, army style. Hot mud would have tasted better, but he was so pleased with himself I forced myself to drink it. Oh, for some sugar and cream. I was ready to fall asleep before the sunset. I carefully pushed the coal to the back of the fireplace and covered them with ashes. I drew a final bucket of water, washed the dishes, and set them on the table. I never did understand why Mother made me dry the dishes. I left them on the table. They would be dry by morning. After I dumped the wash water at the base of the cherry tree, I dragged up the stairs, ready to fall into bed. Grandfather had already collapsed on his covers, snoring loud enough to shake the stars from the sky. The noise was unbearable. If I stayed, I would get no sleep at all. I carried my blankets downstairs to the front room and made a soft pallet on the floor. If I leave the shutters open, do you promise you won't run off in the night? I asked Silas. The cat turned in a circle on the blanket and closed his eyes. Very well then, the shutter stays open. We will both sleep better for it. I sat next to Silas. It had been a good day, all things considered. I had managed rather well on my own. I opened grandfather's Bible. This is what it would be like when I had my own shop, or when I traveled abroad. I would always read before sleeping. One day I would be so rich I would have a library full of novels to choose from. But I would always end the evening with a Bible passage. I turned to Psalm 4 8. I will both lay me down in peace and sleep, for thou, God, only masked me, dwell in safety. My eyes drooped enough for one night. I blew out the candle and snuggled on my pillow, asleep before the wick had cooled.